Good afternoon. This is January 28th, 2021, the first meeting of the Maintenance and Development Committee with myself, Kateri Walsh, as chair, Councilor Jesse Lederman. Also joining us are Council President Marcus Williams and DPW Director Chris Cignoli. What I'd like to do at this meeting, Chris and I talked a little bit yesterday about some of the topics we'd like to cover, and hopefully you got that bullet point. So I want to let Chris talk a little bit about the department and where he is and where he's going. And of course, the big topic of COVID and how it's impacted the department and the employees. So after Chris speaks, feel free to jump in with questions. So Chris, it's on to you.
Sure. Number one, with regard to COVID, you haven't seen it today. There is an article on Mass Live on one of our employees, Doug Hook Live, has been out doing stuff on some of the essential workers, and we fed him Angel Santa from our department. So if you haven't had a chance to read the article, it's a very, very good article on that. And he's an employee in our solid waste division who contracted COVID sometime around after Thanksgiving, I believe, with that. And just kind of an overview with us. We got about 135 employees. Our operations in solid waste, which makes up 90% of that, has been working full time since the pandemic started. We've had nothing, we haven't done any reduction in workforce. We did do splitting up of all our employees into separate trucks, and that's continuing today, with the exception of a few things on the solid waste side, but virtually everybody's in their own vehicle. We did administratively and in the engineering go to 1 day on, 1 day off for a while. However, that was lifted July 1st, and everybody has been working. We've had a number of people who have contracted COVID. In all cases, it's been determined that none of them were contracted at work. So it was all family side, and it was all contact tracing through the family that they were notified. We did have a couple instances where we had some people who were fine, got notified through contact tracing for some family members and had been at work for 3 or 4 days. So what we did, depending upon the timing of it, we were always able to get tests immediately.
Okay.
Through the state system that at the time was over at the Big E, or through AMR. So whenever we needed to get people tested, we were, at most it was a day to be able to do that. And what we did is, and it's the same thing for most departments, when people were out, they were paid. And then we went through a process to determine if they were COVID positive, COVID negative, and then got them back into work. With regard to COVID in general, I'm not trying to make light of it, but we were, we had a person here, a person there, 2 or 3 people at a time that had family members, and it really wasn't a major impact to us until about October. In October, we started to get up to, there was 1 week where we were over 10, and then there was a sustained period of time we were 8+, all in the solid waste division. And that was one of the items that really put us behind the 8 ball with regards to yard waste. Mm-hmm. Volume of yard waste, number 1, was a problem, but number 2 was just lack of employees. And we went out, we hired outside help to do that, to get us through a little bit, but there were a couple weeks where we did not have enough drivers in solid waste, and we were having to switch people from operations over to be able to do that. And, one of the things that I always talk about, and, I know I like to cry sometimes, but, we talk about every time when we do budgets about how departments get to be razor thin. And this was probably a very good instance of it. And aside from COVID, we probably at a particular period of time had 7 people out for workman's comp. And at the same time, I probably had 9 to 10 open positions in the department. And I was going to talk about that in a second. Let me just shut something off here so I don't get any more bings and beeps. having a very, very difficult time hiring, especially drivers. There are not, historically, we had a list of civil service that would be 200 names deep for drivers. That list is now about 40. And when we had interviews, we invited all 40. The first time around, 5 showed up. The rest of the people just, they don't show up for whatever reason. So we're having a difficult time with that. So there was a period of time, October, November, where we were probably short 25 or so people overall in the department. And so we have to go through the hiring process. We've also been hit with, since that time, probably 6 retirements. So we were having a very difficult time with employees, with a little bit of everything. And we got all the services done that we needed to. However, the one thing that I don't want to say we picked one thing to kind of fall apart, and it ended up being the yard waste, because we knew we were going to be able to, at a certain point in time, throw more people at it. So that was kind of the impact for COVID. On COVID side, all of my employees who wanted it received their first vaccination 2 weeks ago yesterday. Through the department, we were part of the police and fire that had it done at that time. Of our 130 or so people, 92 of them elected to get the vaccine. There was about 8 or 9 of them that didn't. And they didn't because they had COVID within a period of time and needed their doctor to approve it. So we only had, 15 or 20 people say they didn't want it. And when you look at these 15 or 20 people, I'd probably say every one of them's under 40. And it was all, I don't need it, not my problem. So our percentages were much, much better than police and fire. Police and fire, probably 50, 60% of people got the vaccine. So we're good with that. And a lot of 2 or 3 of the people also said, I'm nervous about the side effects, I want to wait. So all of a sudden, when they didn't see people growing horns or, eyes falling out of their head, they decided that they wanted it. So we are about 95 out of 130, or probably about 120, given the openings and stuff we had of people who got the vaccine. So I mentioned with regard to hiring, backfilling and retirement.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask you about that.
Sure.
So going forward, after everybody gets the vaccine and so forth,
Yeah.
How's your budget going to look, and are you going to need to hire more people to fill in with your retirements? And
Yeah.
is it in your budget?
The budget, 99% of the time when we get our budget, the roster that we have, our employee listing, is in there regardless of whether the person is there, if they've retired or if they're on comp or something like that. They're in the budget. So, all we have to do is we have to go through HR, notify them put together a rec through our NeoGov system. It gets approved through the PRC, and then we go through hiring. We've hired 3 drivers. We actually, this week, we're probably doing 4 different sets of interviews for maintenance craftsmen. We hired an engineer. We have a storeroom keeper, and then we have 4 drivers. So we've got a lot of interviews. It's just kind of the prolonged process of what we have to do. So they're all in the budget. We haven't lost any positions. I don't anticipate to lose any positions, but we never know. But right now, everything's been approved to be backfilled. So when the budgets come out, all those positions should be filled. The other thing, Kateri, we mentioned this yesterday, in order for a position to be eliminated, there has to be union notification. And at this point, the city has not done any union notification with regard to layoffs or anything like that. So I haven't seen our budget. I don't expect to see it for probably another week or so. We were waiting for the state budget to be able to look at some numbers. So, it's a process. And the other openings that we had were in the garage. 2 openings there. The last 3 years, we've hired somebody from Putnam after they've graduated, and they have been fantastic employees.
Great. Good to hear.
Couldn't do that this year because with COVID, they weren't allowed to do anything on the trade side.
Oh, that's too bad.
So, yeah, we were a little disappointed because we did have 1 junior last year who would have been a senior this year working through us with as well. So we're going through the hiring for that now. We've hired one guy, and we're waiting for a decision from another in the garage. But so because we've had one retirement and one person took another job in the department. So, and those are when people come in, they work second shift on that. So before I go on to something else,
well, I just want to check and see if my colleagues have questions or concerns.
say anything on the hiring or that side of it?
What we've covered so far, because we have some other topics we want to get to.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
On the other thing that we've been hit with, trash recycling and bulk volumes have massively increased, 25 to 30%. Now, from a finance standpoint, if this wasn't, well, first of all, I think if this wasn't COVID, we wouldn't be seeing those numbers. People are just at home throwing everything out. But with COVID, with the CARES Act money that the city has received, the excess trash recycling and bulk numbers are being offset by funds through that program. So we're not getting hit big time with any sort of increases from a finance standpoint, but the volumes are increasing, especially on the bulk side, more so than anything else. So that has been.
Well, I know I can speak to that because I think all of us have been cleaning out our closets.
Everybody
I think
has.
the council president wants to join us. He wasn't able to raise his hand, but Councilor Williams, did you want to make a point?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, I just had a quick question on just since we're in the middle of winter, the snowplow operation. Have we gotten more folks on staff for drivers?
On our side, we are from contractor standpoints, we are at about 118, 120. So while not a great number, I'm a little bit more comfortable. We still got people signing up now. So I'm a little bit more comfortable with the number. It's much less than what I want, but slowly it's getting better. On our side of the table, we have 5 openings right now as drivers, and we're going through the hiring process for that. So from the city side, I don't want to say I'm not concerned about that, but on a prolonged event, meaning that we're plowing and then spending nights doing a lot of sanding and salting around the city, it gets to be a little bit of a problem. But I'm comfortable right now with the overall number that we have inside. But we are going through a hiring process right now for 5 people. We just hired 3 that started middle of December, so they're getting a baptism by fire through the snow side.
Good to hear. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Lederman, did you have any concerns you wanted to mention? Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. This is new to me doing the meeting. I see Justin Hurst hand. I don't see Justin, but did you, Councilor Hurst, thanks for joining us. Did you have a question? You're on mute.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for having this meeting, Madam Chair. Chris, quick question for you. I know you talked about the bulk pickup and the fact that it is on the rise. I guess, my question is, are we taking any steps to reduce the timeline in terms of, when folks call? I know the last time I called, it was roughly a month to 6 weeks. And so to me, that seems like a recipe for disaster in terms of folks trying to find places to dump their bulk items. So where do we stand?
I'm sorry, Councilor.
No, go ahead.
In the middle of December, what we did is we were taking, I want to say 55 appointments a day. We increased that to 75. Our problem on bulk really isn't manpower or anything like that. The regular bulk material and electronics have to be collected separately. The electronics go to Palmer. Our bulk material goes to Wilbraham on Old Boston Road. I don't want to say right around the corner, but just off of Boston Road. The requirements that we have for dumping, both of those have early timeframes during the day. So it was our guys were then having to basically by 2:30, 3 o'clock had to leave, drive all the way to Palmer to dump all of the electronics to be able to get back to have an empty truck either for later that day or for the next day. So that was putting a squeeze on it. So what we did is that we started to add, once we got past the yard waste time, we added another truck and we started taking more appointments. And what was hilarious with that is that within 2 weeks, we went down to probably a 2.5 week wait. A 2 week wait is pretty standard because it's usually, it lines up with your recycling. And it was like all of a sudden, I made that announcement at a couple of the mayor's press conferences, and we got inundated within about 3 weeks of all these people calling. So what we've done is we've put more people on it and we've tried to get it down. We're trying to work with 311 because 311 was, I don't want to blame them in any way, shape or form, but they were limiting the appointments and not getting into with, you know, for example, you call, if you just have a couch as an example, that we kind of figure out how much time that takes during the day. There were certain days where we were doing 80 appointments, but the guys were done by noon because you'd go to somebody's house and the one thing that needed to be picked up was, you know, a thing of, you know, something like this. Yeah, he's just it's something simple. And then there were other days where there was, you know, 25 appointments and people had out 10 things. So we needed to work with them to get a better idea of numbers and stuff like that. And I think we've kind of turned that tide a little bit. We are finishing up Christmas trees this week. So the guys that are doing that will also get reassigned onto the bulk to get that down a little bit. So, because we want that to be 2.5, 3 weeks. Because I get, obviously $8 a thing is very good in versus having to pay somebody, you know, 25 or 30, you know, a junk guy to come and take that stuff. So we want to be able to get that down. But the numbers that we're, the volume that we're dealing with is massive at this point. The bulk stuff, I'm not gonna say the bulk stuff doesn't surprise me, but I'm still trying to figure out where all the recycling and I'm gonna guess a lot of food wrappers and a lot of stuff like that. But the trash and everything has been surprising. And just to go backwards for a week, last Friday, the Agawam Board of Health shut down the burn plant in Agawam due to repeated violations by Community Eco Power, who is the entity that runs that facility over there, and kind of threw us into a major panic last Friday. We ended up finding another location through another vendor to dump our material, but they have to shut the facility down for Friday and entire weekend to do cleaning because I guess they had some very big repeated violations on the COVID side. So any other questions on trash recycling?
Thank you.
I've got one. You know, a few years back, when I was on maintenance and development before, you had talked about a pilot program about picking up recycling once a week. Is that dead and gone, or where is that?
It's not. No, it's not dead and gone. At that time, what we were looking to do, there was a mandate that was being pushed by the state that which has since been completely rescinded. But at that time, what the state was trying to do was reduce trash and increase recycling in order for the state to meet their federal EPA guidelines of recycling material, just the standards that were being done by the federal government. So what the city was looking to do, one of our ideas at the time was take our trash barrels, reduce them in size to a 65-gallon barrel. I would never go to those little things that you see in Long Meadow, East Long Meadow, Chicopee. I don't want to, I almost in a way forced residents to use recycling a lot more. And we would then go to once a week recycling. Well, since the recycling world has changed, forcing things to go into the recycling is Yeah, it's bad financial business at this point, but we went from a line item of disposing of zero up to over $1 million for disposal of recycling, because now you have to pay to get rid of recycling. We also have a revenue source with that, which is about 300,000. So we're netting about 700,000 in additional cost. So at this point, what we're doing is we're keeping the barrel sizes the same, and we'll be doing that forever. We don't think we need to go to once a week recycling. We're not running into individual volume sizes of people having full barrels, other than spots here or there. But if we start to see it becoming a major problem, we would start looking at that.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And do you have any feeling or concerns or feedback on how the state's going to treat you?
Well, the state, the problem that the state is in is the state, our recycling used to go over to, well, it always went to Indian Orchard, because we're a single stream community, but it was through Waste Management, and it was part of the state's contract that they had for recycling. The dual stream communities were always bringing their stuff down to the recycling facility on Bernie Ave. Last year, the state had to do a new contract, and Waste Management was the low bidder for it. And Waste Management's price for getting rid of recycling materials was $146 a ton. We pay right now $73 to get rid of trash. So it's like double to get rid of recycling, and their financial reimbursement to us was going to be less than $100,000. So we went out to bid on our own. While we were doing that, we were having meetings with all the area towns, as well as the local state reps, state senators. And we were meeting once a week over in in Westfield. And what we did get the DEP. The DEP ended up getting rid of the idea of what they were calling it as 30 by 30, reducing trash, 30 by 20, reducing your trash volume by 30% by the end of the year 2020. That went away. So the DEP is not pushing us on trash anymore, on reduction of trash, simply because of the environment that we are in right now. One of the things, the mayor is having a meeting with the delegation tomorrow, and one of the things that I asked for that delegation is there were some rules and regulations that we were actually trying to get some relief on materials that are required to go into recycling, to see if they could go into trash. And that was going through the legislature last year, but it never made it through. And it was, drawing a blank now, but certain types of food containers, things like that were required to go into, or I may be wrong on it, but it was like certain types of material cannot go in the waste stream. It has to go in the recycling, and vice versa. So we're trying to get some relief on that.
Okay. Well, how about my favorite topic, paving streets? There's so many, the real or imaginary list of people who've been waiting 15 years or so. But I mean, there are a lot of people that don't seem to fit into the criteria, whose streets need to be paved.
Yeah.
The state delegation can do something about that.
Well, there's two things. Number one, on Friday of last week, I believe, as part of the governor's budget, he put forward his Chapter 90 request for this year, which is $200 million, which is what's been proposed for the last 10 years. So I was actually a little nervous that there was going to be a cutback or none, but he did put that together. And one of the things that I've asked the delegation is to A, at a minimum, approve that, but B, attempt to increase it. Every year, they always want to do it at 300 million, and then it's cut back. So that gives us about $3.6 or so million for paving. And that, or excuse me, as part of our Chapter 90, we use about 2.8, 2.9, excuse me, for paving. Our long list, as we call it, of about $15 million worth of paving was sent to all of the utility companies about 2.5 weeks ago, and we're waiting for them to get back to us on what streets we need to stay away from, work that they need to do. As an example, one street that I was planning on doing next year was Long Hill. Long Hill's in horrible condition. There's been some, obviously some pavement problems there. And at the same time, we were going to be doing the end of Sumner Avenue, a little bit of widening there for that parking issue that there's always a problem.
There's quite a few issues there, yeah.
Yeah, we had a big plan to do all of that. Well, about a month and a half ago, Columbia Gas there's going to be a big, I thought they were going to be doing it in January, but I haven't seen a new date. A few years ago, they were doing a new gas line loop that was going to be in Long Meadow. And they informed us that they need to put a new gas line down through Forest Park, down Long Hill, and down East Columbus. So that's kind of put our plan on hold for Long Hill. So we're waiting to get back the stuff from the utility companies on the streets to stay away from on that. We just added, and I don't have my list here, we had some savings in the program that started in July, and we just added, I think it was 5 residential streets to do in the spring on that. I'll have probably a list of what I anticipate for this year, probably a preliminary list, probably the end of February of what we're looking at. And I can share the big long list and then the streets that the utility companies are asking us to stay away from on that as well. But, you know, I agree with you, Councilor, and I've asked we had it in the state also put together a transportation bond bill that was approved by the governor last week, which is great news. However, the bad news is they didn't approve bonding for any funds. So, you know, it's one of those great feel-good things at the legislative level that they've created this bill of $19 billion. However, no money's been bonded. And we had, I think it's 8 projects in there of all scales and sizes on that as well. So that's where we sit with paving. Like I said, probably end of part of February, I can share that list. We will not get notice from the state, assuming on the Chapter 90, as we usually do, maybe end of March, beginning of April. And, you know, when we get that, which is pretty standard, and we'll get that, obviously we got to go in front of the council for the acceptance of that money as well. So
I'm sure, you know, we'll all be anxious to see. I hope that every neighborhood
that's what we try to do. We try to hit every neighborhood that we can. So
all right. Well, my last question, I don't know if my colleagues want to add anything. Well, 2, snow. You've been lucky so far, I'd say. Yeah. Yeah.
Looks like there's going to be a decent snowstorm Monday night into Tuesday. Right now, it looks for us, we're only getting about 5-6 inches. East of us is 8, 10, 12, but it's 4 or 5 days away, but that looks like that's going to happen.
So do you have enough drivers if there's a major incident?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're pretty well set. We're set. I mean, I would love to have more contractors. Our only problem with that, instead of a storm taking, you know, 12 or 13 hours, it takes 14, 15 hours. So that, you know, that's the only problem that I have. For us, yeah, we're all set with that.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if it's you who handles it, but I think there's always confusion when the parking ban is over for people. I don't know if that can be addressed or made more
do a
public.
notice. You know, we had it on the other night, and it's always one of those tricky things because we didn't, when I say we, you know, the police do all of it. We didn't do any towing.
Right.
The last thing I wanted to do was do towing and not sure if we were going to end up having to do a major plowing event because people get mad at me anyways, and I don't need them mad at me when we're towing cars and not plowing.
Every season, leaves, snow, streets.
So, you know, there were tickets that were issued, but there was no towing operation. And we do as much of a blast as we can for the for both putting the ban on and then taking it off as well. So, you know, we try to get it out as quick as we can. We team up with police and we team up with the mayor's office through his office communication, Facebook, websites, and, you know, knock on wood, for this year, we've had a huge uptick of people who have kind of joined the Facebook pages of all the city departments. So we're getting, you know, we're now getting notices out to, I know, so there's a little bit of an overlap, but we're getting it out to 10,000 people every time we send something out. And the other thing that I've been doing is that I've been posting information on Nextdoor.
Okay.
And
Oh, yeah.
not a huge fan of that. The city doesn't want us to do it as a city department, so I just do it on my own to get it out there to more people on that. But, you know, one thing I kind of figure out on those is most of the people that are on Nextdoor are on Facebook. You know, so we're trying to get to as many people as we can.
Okay. Councilor President Williams? Got to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I should know this by now. Chris, I just had a quick question. This is a bit of an outlier question, but to what degree do you, I guess, maybe speak to the other DPW directors and other neighboring municipalities to, you know, maybe share ideas on what's working, what's not working? Just
a lot. And one of the discussions that we had in November and December was the lack of people signing up to be plow drivers. That was their major concern. We talk a lot about trash. We talk a lot about recycling, and we talk a lot of items that go through MMA, the Mass Municipal Association, with regard to Chapter 90 funding, and a lot about state and federal grant applications. So trying to figure out, you know, I talk with, you know, Mario Mazza's in Long Meadow. I talk with Mario. I talk with Chicopee a lot. Him and all those communities. Chicopee, John Bollier, who used to be the mayor's chief of staff when Richie Koss was there, is one of the higher ups there now, and I've known John for years. Ed Megan, Wilbraham retired. Bosch is now running that department. So we talk with them all the time. And really, one of the things, you know, we talk to them a lot more, probably most about funding. And, you know, some of it is, I want to say, the bitch pissing and moaning of how our, you know, how our people above us, whether council, whether the mayors, you know, how we understand, how everybody understands money coming in and going out and what we're facing and how we present it. So we do that a lot, but it's also about kind of figuring out what's coming down the road so that all of us can start meeting with, you know, we try to meet through different organizations 3 or 4 times a year to get in the right people, whether it's Mass DOT or DEP or EPA, to get them in to discuss it. So we do that all the time. There's always a few communities that you never hear from until, you know, something bad happens, like the recycling issue last year. There are communities you never talk to, and all of a sudden they want our help because, you know, we're a little bit of the political, you know, so to speak. So, but we do talk to a lot of the communities around us.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Oh, I have just one last question, and that's what projects can we look forward to?
Sure. Before I get to that, there's just one last thing and that I just wanted to mention. Columbia Gas was taken over by Eversource in the middle or in the end of October. So we are dealing with a new group of, when I say a new group of people, it's a new group of people on the gas side. However, it is the higher up people that I've been dealing with on the electric side. I could not have expressed my disappointment with Columbia Gas more in the past 3 or 4 years in the work that they've done, how they've done it. And just examples, State Street, they did work on Upper State Street. This is going to be the 4th calendar year they're working on that project. Fort Pleasant Avenue, 3 years. Allen Street, this is the 3rd calendar year of this project. So one of the things that we've been doing with the new Eversource, one of the things I noticed with Columbia Gas were the worker bees that we were dealing with at this level, and there was nobody in between, and then just the higher ups. And the higher ups could have cared less at that point once they knew that they were being taken over by Eversource for about a year. So now that Eversource is in, there's enough middle management for us to deal with and to be able, and I hate to use the word threatening, but we're doing a lot of threatening with them, taken care of in the city. You know, trenches don't get repaired. You know, excavations are temporary. You know, stuff taken 4 or 5 months from stuff to get fixed. So I think we've kind of turned the corner a little bit, but this spring is going to be a thing because really it's going to be the first full season of them in that. So just Bay Street in Berkshire is probably about 40% done, Mass DOT funded, design through the city. Berkshire Cottage and Harvey will be starting in April. The cottage and Berkshire will be having a new signal put in there. It's a state project. I'm trying to think now. Ludlow Construction Company will be doing that. Cottage Industry and Robbins Ave will be starting probably later in the year, September, October, maybe. That's a state project as well. The X right now is scheduled for advertisement in fiscal year 24. So we're at the 25% stage on that, and we're moving forward on that. So we still have a little time. We are in the middle of design on the McKnight Rail Trail, and it has been a experience in trying to deal with Buckeye pipeline on that. They've just been impossible to deal with, and we had a blowout argument with a gentleman from Columbia or Buckeye out on the site one day. They're just being obstinate about their work out there. But that project's moving forward. There's a study that's finishing up that we're going through. Actually, Laura's overseeing it right now for the rail trail in the same rail line in East Forest Park. So there's going to be some Zoom meetings going on with Forest Park Civic Association, East Forest Park, and we're making some more grant applications. Harena School, Bernie Avenue work, design work has started. We got everything approved by the state. So we selected a consultant late last year. They're underway with their design right now. South Branch Parkway in the area of Gunnery Sergeant Sullivan Park right there. We have a major manhole that needs to be repaired. We got grant funding through the federal government and FEMA and MEMA, and that construction will start probably June or so of this year. We're waiting for formal notice. We have a culvert problem on Tiffany Street. We've been unofficially notified that that work has been approved. We're just waiting for a kickoff meeting. We've applied for 4 different projects. The state put together the Shared Streets program to address some of the outdoor dining issues. The first 2 that we submitted were kind of through planning, and they were denied. The last 2 that we did were approved. One of them is the crossing and bump outs that are up on St. James Avenue by Wellesley Street, which has been a problem up there. And the one that was just approved was completing a bump out in front of Theodore's on Worthington Street. So that work has to be completed by the end of May. So that's going to be as soon as the weather breaks. That's going to be taken care of. MassDOT has also notified us that they have like 3 or 4 projects that they're doing in the city. The railroad bridges on Armory Street in the area of Albany Ave. Both of those bridges are going to be completely replaced. And the only word I can use to describe that, it's going to be a mess when they do that from a traffic perspective, but they're in the design phase on that. St. James and Carew, the double intersection there is going to get redone. St. James Avenue at Tapley Street is getting redone. And I received notice a couple weeks ago that Mass DOT is looking to do improvements on the Rotary, Armory, Liberty around where kind of, they call it a rotary, but it's the whole area where the state police is, and that whole area there with some traffic problems and traffic signalization. We've seen a huge uptick in the amount of residential development going on in the city. For those of you who got your tax bill, you know your assessments went up. And I'm sure you've heard it from your constituents on that, because I know everybody's been complaining about it. House prices are fantastic right now if you're trying to sell. But what that's turned into is every developer is finding a square foot to build a house on. And there are some lots out there that should not be built on, but people are trying to build on them. And just overall development, in my opinion, right now is probably higher than it's been in 2 or 3 years. We had kind of a blip around the casino, but everything else has been a lot of development being pushed in and around the city. I know I'm forgetting a handful of other small projects.
Well, we'll have other meetings. There's a lot going on. Of course, when you are going to have something coming before the council, please let myself and my committee know before it gets to us. And I think I have no further questions, but I know you do, Council President Williams.
Just a comment, Chris. Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just one comment to end off with. It kind of relates to what you just said, Chris, around folks building lots on buildable land. The issue that we had on the street name is 16 acres. You know what I'm talking about?
Cabinet Street. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. I just hope that at some point in time, maybe the subcommittee can be a part of that effort to have a mechanism in place where it allows the residents who are having new, homes built on their streets, especially for dead end streets or things of that nature. Just some shared communication. What we came into, with 16 acres and Cabinet Street was, I think, something that could have been avoided if they would have received proper notification in advance. So that's just, food for thought. I know I've mentioned that before. It'd be great to have some type of mechanism for that.
Yeah, one of the things, just for the other councilors, and is throughout the city, when I mentioned residential development,
okay,
like in that area that we're talking about on Cabinet Street, Marcus, those subdivisions were created in the mid 50s, late 50s, and just, they just, did parallel roads, and, there's hundreds and hundreds of lots. And right now, developers are just trying to figure out that, hey, if I had to sell a house for 100,000, I'm not making any money, but I'm looking, I can sell for 225. Right. Yeah, fill in some wetlands. And so it's not that we're running into new subdivisions, it's all those old ones that
are
legally, when they're doing them one at a time, they don't have to do any notification,
right.
Through the name, which is what we ran into obviously there. So, we're going to be cognizant of making sure that when we start to see, and as a matter of fact, on that, there was the other gentleman that was at that meeting who owns 4 lots farther down the street. And he says, yeah, I'm going to start in the spring. He hasn't come to us for anything. He hasn't submitted any plans, but, one of those, he would have to go through notification, because one of the problems we're running into on these developments now is there's wetlands, there's a lot of grade problems. So they have to get variance, which then variances that then push them into the public meeting realm as well.
Yeah.
I do see that. I'm sorry, I just noticed you have your hand up, Councilor Lederman.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions here in our final minutes. Couple questions based on some of the things you brought up, Chris. For the recycling and trash barrels, I know we have seen a big volume we talked about earlier in the meeting.
Yeah.
Can people get a second recycling or a second trash barrel if they pay the fee again?
Yes, they can.
So they just need to reach out to DPW about that?
Yeah, and what we advise the residents is, if it's a temporary thing, because what we don't want to be doing is, hey, I know I'm going to need it for 2 months, and then come and take it. A couple of people have tried that. If you think it's going to be a short period of time, I advise people, buy an extra bag sticker. It's $2, try it for a while versus paying a $90 fee and then realizing in the end, I really don't need it.
That's fair.
Because if people need it, fine. Yeah, they can get it. It's not a problem.
Sure, that's what I thought. And then for the snowstorm next week, I know we were able to pilot the snow map during the first one. I certainly thought it was very useful. I was able to answer I think a lot of questions that otherwise we would have had to text you and we would have just heard.
Yeah.
We didn't get there yet. So
Yeah.
Will we be able to go live with that for this next one for the public?
Yes. Yeah. Really what I wanted to do was put out a notice
Yeah.
a day or two ahead of time. So what I'm probably going to do is, assuming we do have the snowstorm, is that probably Sunday, and then again on Monday, is put out a public notice through Facebook, and hopefully all of you can glom onto it as well and share it with everybody that you have, of the link and what we want to do. The one thing that needed to be revised is on the website, or on the website itself, there wasn't enough room for me or us to kind of put messaging on there.
Yeah.
To kind of let people know what was going on. Because really what they did is they kind of gave us like 2 lines of it. And one of the things I found out is that there really needs to be some more area for messaging to let people know what we're doing, how we're doing it. As an example, that storm, because of the timing and amount of snow we got over a period of time, we plowed all of the mains, then went into the residential streets, but it was still snowing. We made a decision that, okay, we're going to do all the residentials, then we'll go back and do the mains again. And what I didn't want to do is show the mains as being complete, because all of a sudden you'd start getting messages going, no, they're not. It's like,
right.
So we want to be able to put that type of messaging out there and be able to tell people when we started, how we started, are we into the residential street yet? How long did we think it's going to take? That sort of thing. So we had our.
I did see the one message on the side. It was like snowstorm update 1.
Yeah.
We only had the one. So.
Yeah. Well, no, we actually got rid of it and kind of I kind of had to keep getting rid of it and adding stuff in there, but it really didn't allow me to write, kind of a paragraph or kind of add on to it, which I think is a little bit more important for me rather than deleting it, because what some people will do is see it, not read it and go, oh, it's the same one as last time.
Sure.
Oh,
so I think that's great. And I think
ready to go. We're ready to go with
the thing
that.
I noticed wasn't there that is there when you go in the control room is like the percentage done, which I think is rewarding for people to see. So if you can get that to show as well.
I'll have to make a note because I thought that was on there.
I mean, I couldn't see it on my end. I was
Okay.
on my laptop, and I couldn't. But I think that also is helpful for people. So that was that. And then just 2 more questions, as I know we're running on time. But you mentioned the Columbia Gas, now EverSource project that they're talking about through Forest Park and up Sumner. They've been very opaque about that. Both when it was Columbia Gas and now, about its route, where it would actually go, and now with the EverSource purchase, sort of whether they're going to do it or not. In the event that they do it, what type of local oversight is there in terms of especially crossing the parkland and in fact going up Long Hill or Sumner? Is this the type of thing where they need to come get the permit to open the street as they normally would, or how does this work?
They would. Well, their big problem for that project in particular is Long Meadow. Back in the old days, I think it's only me and Kateri who are that old now.
Excuse me.
The old gaslight facility that was on West Columbus Avenue. When they manufactured gas, they created a series of lines that went out from there throughout the city, and that's what's been extended over years into Long Meadow. The problem with that is that during peak demand periods of time, especially in the winter, they can't push enough gas. So what they're trying to do is connect all those fingers in the end so that they have better circulation. So in doing that through Long Meadow, I don't know if you remember, it was probably 1.5 years ago, they had public hearings and they got crucified.
Yeah.
I remember.
The problem with it at that time was, I think it was like 2 weeks before, they had gone out and done a bunch of right-of-way clearing, because in Long Meadow, there's a whole series of pipelines that actually runs through people's yards. If you drive, I think it's Wolf Swamp. Wolf Swamp has a gas line that runs on people's property. They went out there one day with a giant machine and just cut everything to the ground. So, if you had a big rose bush out there in the memory of your mother, that got cut down, people went bananas. So that's going to be their problem. Now, in the city, They will have to go through the Board of Public Works and the City Council process
Okay.
on that. So, but in the city of Springfield, I'm not going to say that their project is a lot easier. It really is it's the installation of a 14-inch main from basically point A to point B on the land. Long Meadow, it's a little bit more difficult because they're doing a lot of interconnection. You know, I don't want to say every house, but every intersection, every place they go through. In Springfield, it's just one great shot. There was supposed to be a major, I don't want to say major, but a big public hearing presenting that they said in January, and their problem is going to be Long Meadow, because I think there's just going to be a lot of pushback. They got to do it. And, you know, they presented some stuff to us, but nothing finite. But they do have to go through all the city processes to do all that.
Okay, so we can explore that when it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yes.
Might even do a separate meeting.
Yeah.
I think so. I think so, and I think there will be concerns about it here too, though.
You know, and one of the things that I want to do with them is when on their major projects that they want to do is definitely, I hate to use the word drag them through the maintenance and development process, but reiterate to them, you know, it's like if they're going to do this thing on Long Hill Street, I don't want to say all well and good, but you know, we just can't have certain areas that aren't, you know, that are sitting there for 2 years that aren't restored. So, you know, I don't mind having the council's help behind me on that. And the people that I'm dealing with now at the higher up levels are very, very good people. They've been great to deal with on the Eversource side. So I hope that that's going to continue on the gas side.
Well, Chris, just let us know who the Maintenance and Development Committee needs to work
Yeah.
with, or the meeting
Yeah.
with it. I'm going to close it out because it's been almost an hour. We do try to keep our meetings to an hour, even though we're on Zoom. Nowhere to go, but stick to that hour. And thanks, everybody. Thank you, Chris. Great
Thank
topic.
you. If anybody
Thank
needs
My
anything, just give me a
colleagues who
yell.
have great follow-up. And the thing about maintenance and about DPW is, I mean, you really impact everybody in the city, every homeowner. So, I mean, anything the city council can do to smooth the process, just let us know.
No
So-
problem. Thank you.
I think that when Councilor Walsh, when I first got on, I think the Maintenance and Development Committee was me, you, and Councilor Williams.
Oh, and now it's just a little reversed.
Yeah, it was. It certainly was.
Very good, very
Great
good.
to be back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
See you all
Thank you.
soon. Stay
Thank you.
safe.
See you.